This costs $150. This costs $5. I brought both stoves into the backcountry to find out what you're actually paying for. So I'd never bring 4 backpacking stoves out on a trip. That'd be kind of ridiculous. But for this experiment, I packed out 4 of the most popular backpacking stoves out there, including the MSR Pocket Rocket 2, the Ultralight BRS, the Jetboil Stash, and yes, a cat food can. Today, we're gonna see how they actually perform side by side on trail. Tonight, I'll cook dinner in my 750 milliliter Tokes titanium pot, which is a bigger pot and usually what I use on real trips. The rules are simple. I'm gonna take all 4 stoves, same water volume, same setup, same conditions. No stopwatches, no spec charts on this one. I know all these stoves can boil water. That's not the question. The real test is what happens when I'm actually out here cold, tired, hungry, and which stove is gonna make my trip easier and which stove is going to cause me friction. First up, the Fancy Feast stove. Literally a cat food can with holes punched in it. This design was popularized by backpacker Andrew Skirka years ago, and many backpackers still consider it the ultimate dirt cheap ultralight stove. For alcohol, I'm using heat antifreeze. It's basically pure methanol, burns clean, dirt cheap, and you can find it at most gas stations. But yeah, it's toxic, so don't drink it. I usually bring it out in this little squeeze bottle here because I typically only need a few ounces each trip. So we're gonna pour about an ounce into the Fancy Feast stove. Now, when it's daytime like it is right now, it's hard to see the flame when you light it. So I'm gonna go ahead and light this here. And then I'm kind of going to use my hand to feel if it's lit. Yep, I feel the heat. This thing is lit. What I need to do now is take about 30 to 60 minutes to let the flame get going and let the stove prime. Now, another thing about alcohol stoves is they pretty much only burn at one speed. You can't adjust them like you can with a canister stove. All right, it's been about 30 seconds. I'm now starting to see the orange flames just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and set my pot onto the stove. Now, the Fancy Feast is a small stove, so it does get a bit top heavy, and it's really important to find a firm, steady surface to place your stove on. The other thing about alcohol stoves is they are very susceptible to wind, so you usually need a windscreen. I am going to use my Tokes titanium windscreen here and set it over the stove. Alcohol stoves usually take about 10 minutes to boil 2 cups of water, so a bit longer than canister stoves. And one of the other things I wanted to mention is because it's very hard to extinguish the flame in a Fancy Feast stove once you've started, you want to be very careful not to knock it over, because if you do, you're gonna spill flaming liquid all over your campsite. All right, guys, we barely got to a boil. I'd call it more of a simmer right as the alcohol finally burned off, but we did get there. We boiled 2 cups of water, so I'm calling this one a success. Next, we've got the BRS Ultralight. $20 seems like the perfect stove, right? But the last time I tried this stove, it failed the first time I screwed it on. It sprayed gas everywhere when I tried to screw on the fuel canister, and it never worked. I threw it straight in the trash. So I bought another one just for this trip, and this is me giving it a second chance. And honestly, I'm already nervous to thread this thing onto the canister, but let's see what happens. Brand new out of the box this morning, and screwing it on, little spurt of gas as it tightened. That's sometimes happens. No leak. It's not spraying gas. Seems to be fairly seated onto the fuel canister, so that's a good sign. Let's light it up and boil some water. So this stove's pretty small. I do like the little legs here kind of lock into place a little bit. I like that feature. It doesn't feel flimsy. It's small, but it feels pretty stable. There it goes. Go ahead and put that pot on. All right. And we got 2 cups of water boiling just fine. So it is a smaller stove. You kind of have to be careful about balancing your pot on the 3 legs, but the BRS worked. It happily surprised me. It didn't fail this time, and we got 2 cups of water boiling, so it is also a success. All right, now the MSR Pocket Rocket 2. This is the stove that I typically bring on my backpacking trips, so I'm fairly experienced using it. It costs about $60. It's not as ultralight as the BRS. It's not not as luxurious as the Jetboil Stash, but it's been the steady baseline that I've trusted for mile after mile. So let's go ahead and screw this onto the canister. Now, one thing to note, there was no little burst of gas as it screwed on like we had with the BRS, just a firm seal, no gas leakage. I really like that. The MSR is quite a bit bigger than the BRS, so you've got 3 really nice and wide legs here and a much bigger cylinder where the flames come out. So let's light this one up. All right, and once again, 2 cups of water to a rolling boil worked like a charm. I have no issues with the MSR Pocket Rocket. It always works, and it gets you 2 cups of water boiling in usually about 3 minutes. All right, so last up, the Jetboil Stash, the premium option in this lineup, and I have never used it before, nor have I used a premium stove before. So this will be my first experience with the Jetboil. Now, unlike the others, this one comes with its own dedicated pot that's made for the Jetboil stove. It's got something called the flux ring along the bottom of the pot, which supposedly makes the water boil faster. So because the Jetboil Stash comes with a dedicated pot, we're going to be using this pot for our setup. All right, and right away I can see that this stove is massive. It's got a much bigger cylinder, it's got pretty wide legs, and it looks like a beast. Gonna go ahead and screw it on, give it the old screw test. And no leakage whatsoever, same as the MSR. So far, only the BRS had a little bit of gas leakage, but the Jetboil was solid. And one thing it also comes with is this little stand. You kind of fold out these legs, and then you just kind of pop the stove on. There we go. And now you've got a nice solid base here, so it's very stable. Now, the other thing I like is when you slot the pot onto the stove, it kind of locks in and it doesn't slide around, so the whole thing feels very stable to me, which I really like. Now, the lid for the Jetboil is like kind of plastic, I guess. I don't really like plastic lids, but it does seem to sort of lock on. That's nice. I don't know how I feel about a plastic lid on my stove when I'm boiling water, but that's what it comes with. All right, so we got everything locked down. We got a stable base, we got a stable stove, we got a lid that's locked on. Everything feels very foolproof and premium, and let's light it up. So one thing I'm noticing already is it's actually very quiet compared to both the MSR and the BRS as far as fuel canister stoves go. I've got it turned all the way up and it's really not that loud, so I'm actually able to talk to you guys here on camera while it's cooking. The other thing that's interesting is that the flame is very concentrated and narrow. With both the MSR and the BRS, the flame is very wide and kind of leaks out around the sides of the pot, but this is very concentrated. All the flame is going straight up into that flux ring thing, and I am not seeing any leakage whatsoever around the sides. So I imagine that probably makes it much more efficient. The other thing I like is that the pot comes with this rubberized handle right here. So it's very easy, I assume, to take the pot off without burning your hands. The titanium pots that I've used before, the Tokes and other pots, they do have a tendency to get pretty hot around the handle right as you finish boiling it. So I usually need to use a bandana or something to pick the pot up off of the stove. But the Jetboil's got this nice rubberized handle, so that is also a plus. And just like that, we have gotten to a boil very fast, I'd say. All right, I'd have to say that felt like a premium experience. Yes, this setup is heavy for sure, but the stability, the concentrated flame, the fuel efficiency, and the quickness of boiling made this feel very fun to use and boil a couple cups of water, and that's what we did. I am calling the Jetboil Stash a premium success tonight. We've seen how all 4 stoves handle themselves in a controlled setting. So after running all 4 stoves, well, they all worked. The $5 Fancy Feast alcohol stove is still one of my favorites, but it's a bit of a patience tax. The $20 BRS looks like an ultralighter's dream, but the sketch factor of it kind of never went away from me. The MSR Pocket Rocket 2 kind of feels like a sweet spot for me. It's steady, reliable, and light enough. And the Jetboil Stash, premium, high quality, peace of mind, super good stability. Ultimately, the stove is just one component of my food system, but the important part for me is, well, the food. So if you want to see the exact backpacking food that I bring on my actual trips, check out this next video. It'll show you all the food I bring on a 3-day trip. So get out there, cook up something warm, and I'll see you on the trail.